So the question becomes, what do I do? Now I have this resistance and people are projecting onto me what my intent is and all this nonsense is going on. If you're the non-anxious presence, by the way, if your anxiety's up and you're going red zone, then all bets are off, okay? You're gonna have to figure yourself out and get yourself at some other time probably back in the blue zone. And by the way, be aware of that. Who are the people in your life that create, that drag you into the red zone the quickest? Probably it's your spouse, but we won't go there at the moment. But other people on your vestry or on your staff or in the congregation or in the community or whatnot, certain people will get you there quicker. And usually, by the way, these are the people that actually do mirror some of your own red zone issues, okay? And that's where these people who drag you to bad places quickly are often the most instructive to you personally. So keep that in mind too, that instead of just writing them off as bad people and evil and the devil and all that kind of thing, realize that these people can be very, very helpful to you in understanding you. But in a vestry meeting, okay, or in a board meeting of some sort or whatever you're in, you don't have that luxury right now to step back and think, oh gosh, well, it's Sally again and, you know, she, blah, blah, blah. If you can stay non-anxious, then you can make one or two moves actually that are very, very helpful at this point. And that would be always, instead of embracing what's being said to you, you always want to send it sideways to the collective, to the other people there. So to say, John, yeah, it's interesting what you just said. I wonder how other people here are feeling. See, I can only say that if, in fact, I'm non-anxious. If I'm anxious, then we're red zone, then okay. But if I'm not anxious, I can say, I can actually allow the collective, and that'll also tell you what the cohort might be. If there's a lot of resistance to it, then that becomes a ground of discussion. Because you're going to be able to get on the balcony and say, okay, wait a minute, last week we took a whole weekend in strategic planning to come up with this vision and these particular initiatives prioritized in these particular ways, and all I did was say, let's get going with it, and all of a sudden they're throwing things at me. Okay, so I would say something like that. First of all, okay, well, what do other people think? So that'll give me an idea as to how much resistance I'm really getting. And by the way, maybe only just one or two people, but they're usually loud and sometimes they're real nasty. But okay, let the collective help you with that. What do other people think here about that? John's made a statement about that. Is that the consensus here? If it is, then let's go back and revisit what we said when we were in strategic plan and said, this is what we're supposed to be doing. Let's figure that out. That's what a non-anxious presence looks like. Someone who, again, remember the blue zone is focused on the mission. John's accusing me of all kinds of malfeasance and whatnot. I'm focusing us not on me, because the issue's not about me unless I make it about me. If I can focus back to the mission and say, well, that's interesting when John said, what do other people think? And does that, because if what John just said is true, then maybe I need to take a look at it. Am I aligned well enough as I need to be around the mission? But they'll tell you that. But what I find over and over and over, the vast, vast majority is the pastor goes red zone when he gets the resistance, and he starts or she starts trying to defend themselves, and then it is about them. And the vestry members walk out and say, boy, she really lost her, he really lost his head, and oh my word, did you hear the words he was using, and blah, 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 blah. And now all of a sudden the mission is completely lost. Now it is completely about you. And then they will, and by the way, then we got the carbon triangle back in here. Now you're starting to feel like a victim, and John persecuted me, and there's probably some people in the vestry that are trying to rescue you, and maybe they've taken John aside and beat him up in the parking lot after the vestry meeting, so now he feels like a victim, and somebody's got to rescue him. This is the way this stuff works. It's all headed off at the pass when you are the non-anxious presence. Can expect the resistance, because you're doing something that makes some sense, and actually is going to bring about some change as opposed to just maintaining the status quo. Okay, they're resisting you. You've expected it. You've handled it well, allowed the collective, the other people there, to weigh in on this, to give you an idea of what the magnitude of the resistance is. And by the way, if the majority of people said to you, well, I agree with John, I don't understand why you would put this on the table, then I would get real confused and send it back to them and say, well, okay, well, wait a minute, I'm confused, folks. We were just all together for a whole weekend, and I thought I was just facilitating what you all had already come to an agreement about. So, talk to me about that. And are we going too fast? Or what you're actually saying is, where's the anxiety coming from? Now, there's going to be some anxiety because you're doing something important here, and John and the cohort may represent some people who weren't all that happy about the direction that you're going in, but there's a preponderance of people that are pushing back on you. That ought to be real information to you that something's happened to raise the anxiety above what they can tolerate. Okay? If the threshold of anxiety collectively with a group, or you personally, gets too high, all bets are off. Remember, you'll tell yourself lies or whatever you need to do to get your anxiety down. So will the group. Okay? The anxiety is too high. Tell me, what you're really asking is, why has your anxiety gotten this high? I don't understand. Why are you this upset? Be confused. You should be confused. If you're not, then I'm confused. Why you're not confused, they're anxious. If you've already made the agreement. Okay. But again, remember what we're doing now. This is all mission-focused, blue zone. Red zone, hey, you're on your own about that. And until you can get yourself to a place where you're a non-anxious presence, get yourself into the blue zone, you cannot help this group move to a successful conclusion. You cannot do it. It can't be done. You are just going to default to your own story, and what you're going to find is that you are going to be fighting about yourself. Your own competence, your own control, your own acceptance, your own survival, I don't know, whatever your issue is there. And then you'll also be taking these behavior postures that whatever it is, you'll be blaming people or trying to, distract them or whatever your favorite method is of doing your red zone. But whatever it is, you're doing a dance that's completely and totally unhelpful in this. Stay blue zone. Stay focused on the mission, allow them to, they're the stakeholders. Ultimately, they are the ones who are going to have to, because it's going to affect them, they're going to be the ones who are going to have to buy into what's happening. So if it means that you're going to have to step back and say, okay, I thought we were at this place where we're ready to make a decision about working on the campus or starting this capital campaign or hiring a youth director or whatever, I don't know. It doesn't make any difference. Obviously, I must have misread something here because I'm hearing from a lot of you that there's a lot of resistance to this. So let's talk about it, okay? Now, if you're red zone, it's about you and you're into the competence, and this is making a statement about the fact that you're incompetent because you can't, you can't hire the youth director, which you said would be a sign of my competence, and the big assumption is if I'm not competent, I'm blah, 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 then all these bets are off. But again, if you're focused, then you can help the stakeholders wrestle with it to a place where they're ready to commit. Compliance is one thing, commitment's another. Very, very strong leaders often get compliance. They often, though, do not get commitment because people have nodded their head and gone along with the groupthink and have not really bought into the decision. So they may be nodding yes with their head, but in their heart they're saying this makes no sense at all. But they're afraid to disagree and have useful conflict around the mission because it gets too red zone with a leader too quickly. So that's what I want you to keep in mind now as you think about change, and I want you to build it on all the different things that we've been thinking and talking about now, because as you see now, all these pieces lock together.